Okay, yeah. Once again, it's about the raising the bar, the baritone, yeah. Some bass foundation, and it's kind of like a thing. I just want to get this in real quick because I'm thinking about the EBT and E equal MC squared, and the thing about the bass foundation and my thought of like um, raising the bar, like the Diners Club symbolic representation with the blue circle with the blue line going straight up in the middle, right? It's kind of like the MC, that the EBT, like the SNAP food benefits and the Lone Star card, and yet at the same time, the Lone Star kind of like a representative of the San Jacinto Monument in the Houston area, and how true that is as a Lone Star state. I mean, if that's the thought of maybe what an easement is for the entire English-speaking world, or what electronic power in Houston, Texas, and WIA International and all that involved. I mean, if it's specifically more so the Houston, Texas area that way. Well, then San Jacinto Monument, how true it is about every state. I'm not real sure if how many like San Jacinto monuments there would be, but I'm assuming since international financial management and that SAN software is like the thing about the you know close to the front lines of the beach, right, and the Gulf of Mexico and the Houston area is like real close, and how true it is about other states having monuments in a way of like a lone star. I mean, each state is like one state anyway, but if that's representative of like that fact, and um, you know what that is in the Stargate program, yeah, or what a star is born, and all that stuff about the if the word's really even born at all, but something about the B and venue I had mentioned because it seemed to be like the real big deal about and I've mentioned it, and sometimes I'm not really sure, but it seems to be like the YouTube, the YT and the white, and the pronunciation of YT in YouTube, bunch of white stuff about white being 65 in alphabet, and YT being YouTube itself, and certain factors that seem to be, ultimately YouTube getting to alphanumerics 109 and governor, and what Los Angeles is to all that stuff about the area code 213 and telepathic brainwaves and Chevrolet Silverado Z71 and Pearland, and so get Maxwell Smart thing about the Agent 99 and all that stuff about the history of the television screen. So anyway, yeah, so like I was kind of like thinking about that because of the 90 degrees seems to be so like geographically in the Pearland Texas area like Brazoria, and the thing of it is, it seems that the EBT, okay, where it's at in SSI and supplemental security, or the International Space Station or International Superstar thing about uh, the Pentagon Reserve Reverse and intelligence opposite and all that telepathic phase stuff about uh, the thing about it, yeah. So anyway, I was thinking about it because the E equal MC squared is kind of like um, somewhere in between the Apple iPhone SE, and I'd mention it because I'm kind of not really upset, but it's kind of like you got to be kidding me because it's kind of like with supplemental security, the availability of like um, governmental issues, and what the deal is. I mean, if that's really just a thought of like the Apple iPhone 6s of the affordable um, connectivity program, the ACP, and what government, it's basically I'm sure that many people might not automatically see alphanumerics and like Harris being Egypt, or the connectivity of the triangle and the pi r squared getting ultimately to an exponential quotient of powers of multiplication as compared to pi r squared. But like in alphanumerics and linguistics and practical application of integration and compatibility and all that. I mean that alphanumerics and linguistics is really about, and all the degree terminology in a way that it seems that it has like really gotten to it. And really truthfully, when I first started, I mean, it really wasn't about where I'm at and what's like really involved at the same time. But it seemed to be like certain factors that are like really happening. Um, and yours up, it is involving entertainment I mean, like it's available information. Well, like I'm a drummer, okay? And, I decided like really when I was really going to decide to be a drummer. Well, really, I really knew probably, probably by the age of 7 years of age, 8 years of age, without a doubt, hey, I'm going to be a drummer. And, it's like, influenced by, obviously, my grandmother was like bongos and some spoons and pots and pans and all that. But anyway, yeah, so that was kind of like really my motivation. I mean, for real. Um, yeah, diapers for real. With just spoons, pots, and pans, and moving my arms to like the beat of the music and her mind of what that is, right? So anyway, so that's like been with me throughout my entire life. But anyway, yeah. So ultimately, like at the age, like real the conscious age of all the fun and haha, you know, deal about the yeah. So anyway, I knew like really, really like at the age of 8, without a doubt that yeah, hey, that's the one I'm gonna get right there, yeah. So I think that's the first time I saw a double bass like drum set. I think it's like it's age of 7 or 8 years of age. So that would be probably where around probably 1971 and 1972. Um, 1972 or 3, maybe 71, 72 or 73. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So like I knew I was going to get a double bass drum set like all the way that long ago, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So ultimately, yeah, all right. So like now I have the Pearl Vision, and it seems to be like everything that's really been truthfully involved. It's kind of like it's kind of like led to this point because I mean, really, alphanumeric linguistics it became really, you know, a necessity for like finding an answer based upon yes, the thing about it, motivation like beyond. I wouldn't really call it obsession, but looking for answers in a whole different perspective and finding it's kind of like a kind of really kind of became fascinated with the entire situation. But yeah, like it was like alphanumerics for like a solid 5 to 7 years. I mean, all within itself before I even really even got to linguistics. I mean, for real. And I mean, linguistics really wasn't really on my mind, truthfully at all, for probably about since June 1992, probably for about a simple and easy 5 to 7 years. Yeah. And then when I got serious about linguistics and the study of language that way, applying alphanumerics, it's like it really became a broader, more concentrated approach to like real real discipline that way. Yeah. So yeah, even more so with the practical application in that way of like analytical and integration compatibility and thing about it. Yeah. So anyway, like it all had led to the humor about the deal about the toilet and it's kind of like right now, kind of like the GMC. Okay, GMC is like 23. Okay, and this year 2023. Okay, December. Yeah, it's 12th month. Yeah, of year 2023, and it's kind of like and the next presidential term in office will be the sixth um presidential term in office. The ending and beginning of what seems to be the same type of deal about the six, whether it's like 6 presidential terms, a 6 year period, a 6 month, a 6 day, 6 hour. I mean, six seems to be so at a presidential level, and in the way of like even like Abraham Lincoln, um, night vision. Abraham Lincoln's the only one that I know of the presidents that actually studied in the dark. Yeah, so and all that in a way of like what that is maybe in the thought of like a black hole, space exploration or space exploration itself, or what night vision is with the nanoluminance of like a measuring the density of light in nano units of night vision and what that is to electronic power that way. But anyway, yeah. So like and once again, it's kind of like got to the raising the bar and the baritone, the humor on the toilet thing, and the solid state, and ultimately, obviously, it's like the food is the thing about the um, obviously, likewise, code blue, yeah, and Israeli flag, and certain things to the delta force of the triangle that would go beyond the thought of like Deep Star 6 or maritime law in the way of like beyond the front lines of the beachfront and local area networks, and it's kind of like really, it's kind of like it has really gotten to the point of like, um, I mean, it's so truthfully true about the humor, about certain factors like on a toilet, and where that leads to like the greed levels of reputable standards of consensual participation, and with the equator and operator and all that stuff beyond architecture and platform and the word in between relation. And the deal about the equator and embedding encryption. Um, and it's like the big four, and it ultimately gets to like the thing about the kernel. And I'm not really trying to just like dwell upon my memory of like just looking at the information about the kernel, and it seemed to be like whether or not if um the book with the lizard on it, and I'm almost for sure it's the architecture of the lizard in the desert. You see, like apparently on a 71, okay, and desert, okay, and the thing about the Mormon Church and Friendswood on Deseret, okay, I've seen it spelled three ways on the street sign, okay, like desert, desert, and Deseret. I mean, I've seen all three of the spelling of the street sign adjacent to like Sunset Boulevard, okay. And the Eagles Don Henley song and down at the Sunset Grill and certain songs by Don Henley. It's almost like the more from Mark the Eggman thing, the Henley thing about the egg, and what that is to pastel colors, and you know the the deal about the resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ, and what the eggs is to Easter, or the monogamous eggnog crusade beyond the Oval Office, okay, and what the pastel colors are, just what where it's at, in pastel, knowing the eggs at Easter involving the resurrection. Okay, well the thing with this is that you know pastel being 73, Houston, Egypt, and the Israeli flag, and all the alphanumerics of 73, and all that connectivity, the Delta Force and misappropriation allegation of the Mississippi, and what Amazon.com is, in Pearland, Texas, as compared to what the Delta Force is to a triangle in schematics and electronics, or what that pi squared factor that being applied with a 6 point star like a Israeli flag, the Star of David thing about the code blue, and ultimately it's getting like something about in my mind about the baritone and the humor of like a GMC racing the bar in a solid state, some like idea of some well balanced deal, so get smart, get Maxwell smart thing about it, and so anyway, yeah, so like I seem to be like the baritone in the solid state, and the Ark of the Covenant. Yeah, can you believe it? Yeah. Yeah. So like the solid state thing about the baritone raising a ball. But anyway, yeah. So like I mean, if it's ultimately getting to what the bar is, and spectrum and bandwidth and all that, practical application, and just the mere simplicity of the words, not always like designated within description based upon its intended use. But I mean, just the simple pronunciation itself sometimes is so naive sometimes, about really how truthful that part about it is. Yeah, so it's kind of like thinking about that because the EBT is like my thought of like the fixture and real estate of living quarters. Okay, and as compared to what a fixture and real estate might only present as a neighborhood, or the difference between like in Washington D.C. ultimately getting to the yay or nay factor, and what a commercial venue of living quarters is, and why a television is or is not uh, a fixture in real estate or a fixture in commercial venue, seems to be the real deal about the distinguishable difference of what programming ultimately provides as a base foundation. So likewise with the food thing being alphanumerics of 40 and blue, and ultimately on a good clear you know day in the sky it's like a real blue. Okay, but anyway, yeah. So anyway, like I was thinking about that because the EBT involving like um, what I see somehow in my mind is somewhere between the ERISA statute and the IRA, like itemization, and whether or not if only intellectual duration would only present maybe a factor of like non-taxable income, or maybe present maybe the thought of like vulnerability, or something about the way law is practiced. Um, I mean, I don't want to necessarily say contrary, just for the mere sake of what has been led to be believed as an ultimatum. Not that it would be maybe a thought of like UL listing, or the thought of a Yul Brynner, or the Ten Commandments, suggesting anything about the 10 and binary numbers, would only represent maybe some idea of an equator, or a 90 degree in the way of like absolute, which ultimately is being the 90 degree of the absolute values, going through algebra and calculus on into, quantum, um, which seems to be the big deal about waveform of audio production. Not limited to, but yeah, and special effects, that way of like going beyond, the absolutes, where they're normally associated with the algorithm. And that's where it really starts getting, whether it is not the part about the algorithm, getting, leaving the calculus thing about the idea of like the alphanumeric 19. Not that it's leaving it. Um, I mean, it's like, available as far as like waveform, or the thought of like a light scribe in a way of invisible programming, or biometrics that would give the impression of what that is, even to a copying process of like involving like an orange cambium drum or a silver selenium drum, normally of toner, not necessarily of liquid, but yet also involving like light scribe of like an electronic in copying process. Okay, like really light scribe is a principle that maybe be designated based upon when available information, not normally given as identified as like a normal copying process involving toner and light electronic charge placed on a photoconductive material of a drum as it's rotating. Okay, light reflecting off of all the bright parts of like a piece of paper, and where the like normally black bold block print is, it like it does not allow light to shine in perfection, and where light is not shine, which is just the letters on the page itself, and the light reflecting off anything other than the letters itself, dissipates the charge on the drum and leaves an electronic charge on the drum, and like it has that toner, and it lifts it and it tracks it to the paper, and then it's fused as it's rolled. And that's how it's like, and really that's really a major factor in principle of like light scribe, although it's not even identified as that, but truthfully it's even that way of barometric, but toner's not really involved with um, um, biometrics. Yeah, I mean the difference between like a toner copier and biometrics, completely electronic in a way, as compared to like a copy and process. But anyway, yeah, so light scribe, like of invisible programming. I mean, it's like it's like the light year thing about it. But anyway, yeah, I was wanting to get to the back to the food thing about the alphanumeric 40 and blue and code blue and all that stuff about the food, and the Diners Club, and it seems to be like the code blue, all the connectivity, and it seems to be like so American English in linguistics that way, that ultimately, I mean, it's like it's phenomenally, it's like it's all like really starting to like form, and it's like it's really like the constitutional law of having the right to assemble. It's like it's all like making serious connectivity and all that about it, like being like a base foundation. And ultimately, the Stars Born thing is kind of like something about, okay, there's two locations like it, in my thing about the how could it not have been, or be like a Stargate program. But anyway, it's like the memory is like the huge deal in my mind of like the Bureau of Printing and Engraving, in a way of like the wide world of sports of like the hood ornament of Lincoln Continental in that rectangle. Um, and there's only two locations, and one of them is, yes, a location of like LASIK's laser corrective eye surgery. Not far from the Art Institute. Houston was actually going at the time on Yorktown, pretty close to San Felipe, and between there and Westheimer. It's like 30 feet, like with the Marathon Oil Company. Marathon Oil Tower Power thing at the time back in the 80s. It's like 30 feet. Amazingly true, huh? Yeah, so like ultimately it got into, like the big three. It's like the Highway 3 thing, and the big three is ultimately getting to, my thought of like the writ of habeas corpus and how true it is. And it's kind of like a, hey, Mercedes, what's going on with that writ of habeas corpus? I mean, um, is it the factors of like a demanded requirement of three demanding requirements? Um, and how true it is compared to what I've known. And it's if whether a requirement is only the issue of whether why one pronoun of the four types of pronoun cannot be used as a subject. I mean, if it's the Mercedes-Benz 3-point thing about the writ of habeas corpus, or even a, a U.S. patent, copyright, and trademark, or the certain factors of even the principle of like the three wise men and isometrics of uh, the tribe of Reuben and of the scribes, navigating what is about the three wise men and isometrics of just the scribes, even in biblical times. Yet, the 3-point thing about the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit is kind of like, there's the question whether if a neglect based on lack of experience will only suggest knowing, or if there's even a need to know the difference between the Holy Spirit and the Holy Ghost. And most people's perception, like mine before, was like a kind of like insignificant. Not that it was insignificant, but there wasn't really a need to like go anything beyond the automatic similarity in that way. But yeah, so like ultimately it's not that now, obviously, because of alphanumerics and certain factors of like inexperience in going to like the thought of a Stargate program for real. But anyway, yeah, so I was kind of like thinking about that because like where's all at now in like supplemental security, the SSI, um, or what is that, the 18, 18, and 9 is what the um 36, 46, and yeah. So anyway, 19 and 19, what is that, the yeah, 38, it's like 47. Okay, it's like judge, right? 47. Yeah, there's like some other things about alphanumerics involving 47. Yeah, so like the thing with this is that ultimately if it's getting to like the thought of whether or not if participating factors would reflect maybe proper English numerical composition of the way of first, second, and third person, um, or what reference might only mean based upon cite, citation of annotation, or what annotation really is. I mean, if it's like ultimately getting to um, annotation and jurisprudence in the way of like um, what the deal is about proper English numerical composition, why one pronoun cannot be used as a subject of the four types. I mean, if it's the Mercedes-Benz thing about uh, the writ of habeas corpus or the demanded requirements, or what intellectual is in that way. But anyway, so like it's kind of like right now. I mean, like EBT. I mean, even the EBT is it like the Mercedes thing? I mean, is it the writ of habeas corpus um, involving like even the EBT and the SNAP food benefits being the supplemental nutrition assistance program and the Lone Star card? I mean, it's the three right there in a way. But I see that EBT of like a commercial venue, a fixture in a commercial venue, yet of if the thought is ultimately getting to hospitality, um, or the 100 Club, or what the deal is about the yays and nays of whether a fixture in real estate is going to be like a living quarter of like a real estate, normally involving like neighborhoods, not necessarily identified as commercial venue. A living quarter is based upon just a fixture in real estate, or what a television is or is not, only based upon programming in the Houston listening viewing area. All that information about what a fixture in real estate is as compared to uh, uh, a fixture like in a commercial venue. I mean, so if a fixture, whether it's real estate or commercial, I mean, how a fixture is defined, it seems to be whether or not if that would include a residential in the way of a neighborhood, or some thought of like programming that wouldn't present the issue maybe only based upon, what is considered consumption or an accepted level or not accepted level, or based upon, the thought of like a, I don't want to say repetition based upon, the thought of like anything other than, human capital. But I mean, if it's a, a constant that dictates whether or not, if it's a preference or a demanded requirement based upon geographic options in programming, I mean, if it ultimately gets to whether or not the how incorporation is actually manufactured. And I mean, if all that is really what incorporation is about, is how it's manufactured, is maybe the thought of like three demanded requirements of a writ habeas corpus. I mean, is it ultimately getting to the real deal about why one pronoun of the four types of pronouns cannot be used as a subject? I mean, hadn't all that already happened? And is it really based upon knowing or not knowing? Or whether, some idea of like telepathic brainwaves has always, I mean, not that it's the excuse or, the human factor of like reacting to a persuasive technique of like thinking, okay? Or something, maybe a little bit beyond, well, the humor. I'm sure something about the humor about it could be really that and not that at all. I mean, really, yeah. So for sure that's where psychology gets serious about the what's funny and what's not. Okay. In any case, yeah. So like, I mean, if that's tolerance, well, whether it is, right. So anyway, yeah. So or the thought of like credits being granted based upon the persuasive technique of thinking. But I mean, if it's really a writ of habeas corpus, I mean, who's been led to believe, what means what to who, and I mean, if it's ultimately getting to, the only method of like computation of, what participation, obviously, whether I mean, if it's a demanded requirement of a writ of habeas corpus to be the thought of even EBT, um, snap food bonus and Lone Star car. I mean, if it's ultimately getting to the fact of E equal MC squared, and somewhere in my mind of like a participating factor of like a itemization that would designate, whether an IRA has been used based upon the forms um, during what would be normally considered, some idea of taxable, whether the word even has to be income or not. Um, I mean, if it's ultimately getting to, the architecture platform embedding and encryption, um, I mean, if there's, time and place for everything. I mean, if it's ultimately getting to whether or not if income is only, the thought of like only two words in a King James Version Bible. I mean, cum privilege, huh? C-U-M, privilege. I mean, is that considered the degree level of reputable standards of consensual participation? Some idea of like the one and only word that I know of between um, architecture and platform. I mean, if it's ultimately getting to the operating equator, what embedding encryption is to only whether consensual participation only reflects maybe the thought of like whether or not if night vision is a factor of a demanded requirement, whether or not it's even a known fact of a writ of habeas corpus. I mean, are those the demanded requirements of Mercedes? Some idea of like a kingsmanship of a misappropriation allocation involving, is it the Old Testament in a way? Or is it like the thought of like the New Deal Act of Roosevelt, between somewhere between six presidential terms in office of um, Theodore Roosevelt to Franklin Roosevelt of the New Deal Act? Why is it retroactive in a way of only like New Deal being 64, the same as HTTP, and yeah, the colon double forward slash? I mean, if it's ultimately getting to the thought of like I mean, I'll actually have to think about it. If the double forward slash is actually a 22.5 degree angle, I'm not real sure if it's 45, 245 degrees, like with the double forward slash. I'm almost thinking that with based upon going through a circuit and all that. I mean, as far as like isometric involved blueprints and even schematics of electronics and electrical and architecture and yeah, platform. I mean, even in computer programming, and language. I mean, really, um, it seems to be like whether or not if really of 22.5 seems to be the thing about RCA, or even, the thoughts of alphanumerics of 98, excuse me, 94, and annotated, or like Samsung. The refrigerator, it's kind of like and I don't know the exact name of the model. I'll actually, when I saw it, automatically, even like Aaron's, lease to own thing. It seems to be so, all manufactured. That's unreal, not funny to me, okay? But, me being, a drummer and like singing, and that Samsung stuff. Well, it really wasn't that I just chose the refrigerator. It's just the one that I really wanted anyway, so I got it, okay? Without even thinking about, the alphanumerics of Samsung being 94, or annotated, or adoption, or abortion, or what the three requirements of, is it really the separation between church and state? But it's kind of like the Paul Newman thing about uh, the color of money, and it being about a pool player and a cue stick, okay? And think about the cue and the color of money, and money being 72 and brown, or that Kobe ID 19 stuff, or, really what that ultimately seems to be somewhere in my mind of like um, whether or not if YouTube and the YT, and the pronunciation, like, the YouTube being YT, or the white, all that white stuff about 65 in the alphabet. 1965 seems to be, a thing about, some of the information. It seems to be ultimately getting to the Bureau of Printing and Engraving, going through the Stargate program, and, the Abraham Lincoln deal, something about the Mormon Church there on, yes, I've seen it, Desert, and Deseret, adjacent to the Sunset Boulevard. And the Eagles sing a song about down at the Sunset Grill. It's ultimately, seemingly, what the 9/11, you know, um, the World Trade Center, really looked like after it had been cleaned up after its, international, like, disaster about it, and, September 11th. My thought was like, going through some of the most intense part about, from a 1995 to like a really a 19, really 94, 95, 96, really 97. It seemed with the way it all happened. If it's only even, even representative of why one pronoun cannot be used of the four types of pronouns, it seems to be like something going through the circuit of even whether it's the and or 3 or 4 year period of like with a hypothetical metaphor is like really involving why one pronoun of the four types of pronoun, what the forefathers of the nation is, kind of like the Mount Rushmore that way. Um, and it seems to be like something about Mercedes and all that, the way it all happened, and even really even thinking that, even having a need to remember, or, and really discovering like, hey, wow, it's like yeah, that really is a big deal about memory about it, and not even realizing, for real, and then realizing it's kind of like yeah, really not funny, but anyway, yeah, so in that way, it's kind of like I was thinking about that because um the EBT being like the thought of a fixture in real estate of living quarters that way are the three factors, and whether or not if it's the root of habeas corpus, you know, going beyond the E equal MC squared, or, thought of somewhere between a recent statute having some kind of space exploration and forward aerospace thing about the, International Space Station in that way, or, the thought of like a Pentagon Reserve Reverse, or, what the deal is about the drummer and a bicentennial quarter, and, celebration of, 200-year celebration getting on, this is the year 2023, and GMC's talking all that stuff on commercial, like military grade raising a bar stuff, okay? And the thing about it is that really, if it's ultimately getting to the Diners Club with the circle with the line in the center, and it's in my mind, it's like it's automatically, the thought of like quantum, and symbolic representation in between the C and a PTIS being 64, okay, um, on the backside of US $1, and it seemed to be like the halo side of that symbolic representation. I say it's haloed, um, really, an extremely tolerance thing about, what really goes on during all that. But anyway, yeah. So it's ultimately getting to the EE factor, and, the thought even like of the homeowners association, General Motors Acceptance Corporation, the International Electrical Electronic Engineering, and all the alphanumerics are like 24, and the HOA and the GMAC and the IEEE. And ultimately it gets to the redundant frequency, the RF. And the word free, it seems to be like the thing about the big deal about the terabyte being 1024 gigabytes as compared to, like, right here in Pearland, the geographics of FM 1128. And the difference between like FM 1128 and like a terabyte being 1024 is like a difference of 104 in taxation and annuity and electronic. And I mean, Houston, Texas, I mean, it's the alphanumerics of Paradigm 6 being 140, and alphanumerics and attenuation being predominantly a sigma alpha delta kappa phi thing, of sorority and fraternity, thing about major universities, or the attenuation predominantly of like a waveform of electronic power and special effects, of um, not limited to audio production. But yeah, going beyond the thought of like what raising the bar is, only to pi r square of bandwidth and spectrum, of my thought of maybe even the limit of the United States Supreme Court of like a 13-band graphic equalizer. Um, what raising the bar is to pi r squared, or bandwidth and spectrum that way. Um, and the only thing about the 13-band graphic equalizer involving the only two colors that are involving night vision measuring density and luminance of like nano units, so that way of like night vision, and what that is to Abraham Lincoln night vision, that way of like the Lincoln Continental, that rectangle, that hood ornament. It seems to be the big deal about the hood ornament being the 90 degree of the Bureau of Printing and Engraving, that way of identifying buildings and high-rise building and commercial venue. And my thing about the two seems to be like in Geneva, Switzerland, about the BN venue, normally associated with the summit meetings. And how true it is about that. I mean, without television or remembering really truthfully anything about that, being flown around in helicopters, live flight, and certain factors being thrown into like a whole bunch of idea of like a reproductions, or the same exact thing about the music videos, and certain factors, yeah, stuff like that happening, being able to grasp and even remember some. I mean, without television, or like even laptop screensavers. Um, and it was predominantly the deal about the Microsoft and a series of sequencing of screensavers that really kind of, it was the museum of the most wealthiest museum in Europe that really went. I mean, I'd seen it, and I noticed it immediately when it started sequencing. And it was at specific times, normally within a 3-year period, maybe to 5-year. And looking right at it, I mean, really, and then realizing something about that hey, I was like, that happened, I was there thing, and didn't even really remember something about it. But and that's when I really knew, is that one particular one on the screensaver, um, that that yeah, that memory became like the real issue about something about that, yeah. And it seemed to be like something about the way it's designed with the marble, the gray, and the granite and the statues and everything. It's almost like a one wealthiest like funeral homes. But anyway, in any case, yeah, it seemed to be like it's identified as like one of Europe's wealthiest museums. Okay, but anyway, something about that, yeah. And that's when I really knew that memory is like the real deal about it. Yeah. So in any case, yeah. So and when I realized that, I kind of like, it's not that I was looking for it or trying to, remember really anything about it, but that's when I really knew that that was the big deal. But anyway, in any case, so like back to the EBT and the food thing, okay, and being the E equal MC squared, it seemed to be like the thing between the ERISA and statute, and the IRA, and the color code of like Air Force One, the White House. And if it seems to be like the intellectual duration of like raising a bar, um, and what that is to baritone, or a base foundation, somewhere between like thought of a so get Maxwell Smart thing about the I've been to a summit meeting, yeah, I've been to AA and American Amplified, yeah, and a little bit of humor about that. the thing about it. But yeah, but in any case, it's like it gets to the thought of even like when you see a mountain climate and all the information that I've previously like talked about involving the book Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, and certain factors of it. Like I mean, if it's these three books based upon information, but you like before like just like going through the circuit, okay. I mean, I'd already like look for some information and Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country. Like was already like before like really all that anyway. Um, and it's kind of like looking at the principles of like digital. Um, um, yeah, principle of digital audio, and William Pullman, uh, predominantly the author. Uh, um, yeah. So anyway, but as much as attenuation involves, like I mean, that seems to be like one of the better books. A little broad, um, a lot of information to cover. But anyway, I mean, it ultimately gets to certain factors. I mean, it's like a whole bunch of information that seems to be when it's, if you want to use the word pertinent, um, involving the attenuation side of like electronics and waveform. Yeah, it can be found in that book. Yeah. So in any case, yeah. So like the thought of the EBT and the Diners Club and the base foundation, it seemed to be like ultimately, like reading Japanese from top to bottom is predominantly the deal. And what the 90 degree is to the absolute values of like um, of the Israeli flag being horizontal. Yet at the same time, it's kind of like whether or not if a commercial venue of living quarter is going to be the base foundation of like, what I see as potentially, the symbolic representation of like a diners club being maybe the only thought of quadrants and going to a Abraham Lincoln night vision deal about the pi r squared thing about the global positioning systems. Ultimately, seems to be the deal about VSAT, you know, and the recent ball thing about the um, GMC, this being the year 2023. And it seems to be like all that information is kind of like going on in my mind, and it seems to be like certain factors of the even the generator, the way things have been happening. It's kind of like you know, going beyond what might only be the thought of like non-degree in a way of like the thought of the left and right side of the U.S., back side of the U.S. $1. My thought of like 2 9-hole golf courses, really. Really doesn't have to be that at all, but yeah, why wouldn't it be? But anyway, yeah, so, I mean, if ultimately it's getting to the thought of like what EBT is in the way of like a 18, um, I don't know if I'd call it maybe um like a node is in software for like a Orion performance monitoring as compared to a hub involving normally the human factor of uh, interface connectivity and cables that way of like switching and routing of stacks normally involving networking of like the human factor of what would be predominantly identifying an IP address and normal switching and routing that would designate the thought of like a preset of circuit and networking manufactured and made that way. In any case, yeah, so like that seems to be the difference between the International Space Station and like the space shuttle in the way of like VSAT communication satellite, even that way of like wireless and like an exponential quotient of powers of multiplication that way of even the thought of like what is on home theater systems identified as I see as the max as 192, and I've seen it both MKZ and MKHZ on Cadillac and Lincoln Continental and and Cadillac that way, and the MKZ and the MKHZ. I've seen the actually on the vehicle as the emblem logo, whatever make model and all that stuff about it. Yeah, and that Z71 thing, it seemed like there for a while, like everyone was like putting Z21. I mean, manufactured labels on their vehicles, and for a while going through Parallax, kind of like predominantly a lot more SUVs. than other, and other trucks as well. But like everyone coming through Pearland for a while had a Z71 on it, right? But anyway, so like so that way, likewise with the MKZ and MKHC of Cadillac and Lincoln Continental, Um, for a while, it was like really kind of even more so limited than the Z71 thing, But anyway, so like I'm kind of like really getting off to where I was going towards, raising a bar and a baritone, and the solid state thing about being so get smart, getting Maxwell smart, and it's already going on like 45 minutes. I'm kind of like trying to stay concentrated in direction. But so like I just wanted to get that in and think about it. And when I just got my 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 rainbow skull cap, it's like one of the cooler designs anyway. I really like this anyway. And I'm a drummer, kind of like normally when I play my drums, I normally wear it all the time anyway. But predominantly, really so much so, more so like when I'm playing my drums. But keep all the sweat out, But anyway, this is like one of the cooler ones. Probably I like this one probably the best, most out of them all, really, right here. But anyway, so like anyway, like I'm going to try and regroup and take a break here in a little bit. But so like I just wanted to include that because it seemed to be like the base foundation, ultimately some idea of like a proper English grammatical composition. Why one pronoun cannot be used as a subject, but really hadn't all that really been happening anyway. Um, or why the topic is the subject, and you kidding me? Huh. So anyway, if all that maritime law only equates to aquanautics, and all that bubble technology, the bubble being like one of the words used in the book Six of the Temple, how the Federal Reserve runs the country, and all that, uh, Federal Open Market window and discount window, and all that, the New York Stock Exchange and commercial paper, and what the bubble is in terminology normally associated with um, that and huge phenomenal proportions of transactions on a daily basis at the New York Stock Exchange. It's the bubble thing about it, and normally involving not limited to, also including like international monetary funds and hedge funds and certain terminology, investment terminology that way of the bubble, yeah um, and all that baritone stuff beyond the toilet, um, and that's why I'm talking about the base foundation of like the Diners Club, because I hadn't seen it in quite some time. But that's like really, yeah. Where's my card? Yeah, all expense paid. Yeah. Where's it at? Yeah, bring it to me. Okay. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so like that's like really be cool. Yeah. So anyway, so like I was thinking about that because of the symbolic representation and what that is to like HTTP :// and computer programming and language, because I think it's only two, and it might even be like the classified ad of like two interviews that like really I had. There were really three, but the third one just wasn't the information like normally uh, based upon the two. I mean it had to be the two off of Highway 290 and Highway 6 area. Amazingly true again, the sixth thing. So anyway, like I just want to say this real quick because I was going to say something because of the building of out in the gallery area on the west side of the Houston, and something about the laser LASIK um, laser corrective eye surgery in the building. It seemed to be like something about that in the BN venue in Geneva, Switzerland, in a summit meeting. And how true it is, only networking and who knows what and what's manufactured and what's SSI as a demanded requirement. I mean, if geographic attachment would only present the factor of what SSI is, or what availability is, or what travel only means in networking, and what television is in a person's home, whether it's going to be the idea of like World Wide Web or wide area network, or the thought of like a 9 degree of a horizontal rectangle, seemingly the big deal of like the Bureau of Printing and Engraving of what was then out in that area. I mean it wasn't uncommon for me to drive out in that area anyway. And previously, it seemed to be like everything I've ever known, that one particular location. Even before, um, I'm not even sure how long LASIK laser corrective eye surgery is, but it's that building. And something about the coupon and really looking at it for real, and seeing something in a whole different perspective, and something about I mean, even YouTube and YT and the white, all that white stuff, and the YT thing about the pronunciation being white in 65. Something about 1965. I was born like in 1964, okay? And my thing about, I was kind of like going to mention it, but, something about, even my mother used to tell me, wait, you're a day late and a dollar short. I don't really go for all that. And sometimes I'm it's like, and it's kind of like almost hard to believe that it's things that my mother actually had mentioned. Like, I mean, like in my preteens, I'm kind of like going like, why are you even saying that? And it's kind of like now, I mean, like I'm like 59 years of age, and really the last, really, probably, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 years, it's kind of like that long ago, it's kind of like, it's like really kind of like the thing like now. And, the thought of like this neighborhood and like Barbara Walters and her television series, The View. And something about even the Duran Duran thing about the um, Hungry Like the Wolf, or the certain factors like Duran Duran. There's some laughter in the song of like Duran Duran, Hungry Like the Wolf. And it's like something in my room, I mean, between the walls, for real, behind the mirror. And that laughter, I mean, for real, like a real attention getter. Yeah, and something like that about the laughter behind the mirror. I mean, it got to the point to realize like going to like really take the sheetrock off the wall just to look. I mean, for real, not funny. But anyway, yeah. So like yeah, and also like there's the Queensryche song, and there's one particular female like vocalist in my mind. Somewhere in my mind, she's like some phenomenal like Universal Air Force person, and in my mind, she's the one that has that degreed alphanumeric linguistic English thing of not limited to um, the word taxi in that song, Just City Woman, right? And like some like background singers, and the identity and the similarities of, just the physical structure of the person. She seems to be like almost the band Yes at the same time, and some huge factors of like what's involved like with the desert and the sand, and like huge, what was in like in like pre-teens, like of the Tonka truck of a phenomenally huge scale. Yet, something in my mind of even background vocals of like the band Toto, and the similarities of the voice, and in my mind, I've almost envisioned what she looks like. But something in my mind, it seemed to be something about the band Yes, and some huge idea of like what was in like Tonka trucks in the like early '60s. Um, yeah, yeah, really, and the idea of like, anyway, it sounded like this neighborhood is kind of like I'd mentioned previously before. It's kind of like the view. It's kind of like a pastel blue bowl, and it's like I was in diapers like here, and I realized for the first time, really for about the last 3 or 4 years, without a doubt. I mean, this home was like here. I didn't even know it. Okay, okay, in 1965. Okay, and then I like went to Houston with my parents. Okay, and the memory of even being here was not even it at all. And obviously, it was tore down. Okay, and years later, I mean, like moved back to Pearland. I didn't know it was like back to Pearland. It's just like the thought of like a thing about Southeast Memorial Hospital, or what that memorial thing about surface to area is, and isometrics and the method of banking ultimately seems to be the deal about isometrics, and beyond a signature of an endorsement, or what's led to believe is a projected estimate option in future, ultimately getting to like right now, making a grade, and like a Star is Born thing of like going beyond the surface of isometrics and a method of banking, or what living quarter is, of degree level, not necessarily the non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization of non-degreed issues involving, the thought of like Vernon State Texas statutes annotated, or the thought of being designated without even being, identified as a sole proprietor, or having an issue of like staying alive based upon, programming on television, or what isometric is, at a degree level, participating, maybe the thought of beyond a demanded requirement of actually, description of actually earning, where that actually happens at, not necessarily as a right to assemble, as a, registered charity, okay? And, all that's like great and cool and all that, okay? Or, some idea of like an appraisal, that might, you know, get some, special attention, but the thing of it is that really, whatever, it's not that, in any case, okay? The thing of it is that really, the thought or naivety of what is or is not available is information, or what the non-degree, non-negotiable is only through whether or not if commerce dictating what's on or offshore is only the thought of internet protocol and a local area network, or what the Chamber of Commerce only is in city administration, or what boundaries and limitations only is to whether or not if being with a description is a degree level of reputable standards of conditional participation, or the equator and operator is only a designated thought, maybe beyond business law and corporate terminology based upon whether or not if the Better Business Bureau is only thought of better being 70 in a secret, and what Vantage and Vantage Love 30 is only to a marginal spread. I mean, if there's only boundaries and limitations based upon what tennis is, or or the Big Ten thing about the Alpha 39 and an angel, or or the Tennessee thing, or what tennis is to the marginal spread that way, or Y2K technology, okay, or sequencing characterization in sets of four in a way of like only using two numbers, binary numbers, or what that really is to the equator. And anyway, or the operator, okay. The thing of it is that really is that um, my thought of like what a fixture is in real estate. Come on. A writ of habeas corpus, a factor of like Mercedes Benz, and like everyone's accused of knowing. I mean, it's available information. Like everyone has a television, right? I mean, it's like it's to be had and it's available, right? So anyway, if a writ of habeas corpus is only a demanded requirement, with the only thought of what intellectual duration or what an easement is as being used as a royalty, or the content uh, being a memory of as a storage, or the human factor in the way of what one pronoun. Oh, you got to be kidding me! The reason why one pronoun cannot be used as a subject, you got to be kidding me! I mean, hadn't that really what it's always been? One pronoun being used as a subject. It's because it's really the topic, right? It's amazingly true, isn't it? So, I mean, if it's ultimately getting to the separation between church and state, or the alphanumeric 64 and ACTP :// in Zion, 1,000 years of peace, and you, Grover Cleveland in the U.S. $1,000. I mean, if it's ultimately getting to that as a minimum of not being non-degreed or non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization and space exploration based upon a family name being on a black dot on the map, or what annotation is to the United States Code's annotation, and some idea of like the Lord Jesus Christ, his own mere words, okay, in the New Testament, okay. I mean, if it's ultimately getting to the New Deal Act in a way of what color code is to the Red Book and United States Code's annotated, uh, I mean, if it's ultimately getting to whether or not if that's really the deal of the United States, flag, red, white, and blue, and the 50 stars thing, or what Ulysses S. Grant is to 50 stars. I mean, is it really getting to the thought of like only what the 100 Club means to 50 stars in the United States of America? Or is it really the idea of like the hypothetical metaphor in Mount Rushmore? I mean, if it's ultimately getting to like, some idea of like a hypothetical metaphor, I mean, if it's ultimately getting to, thought of like why one pronoun of the four types of pronouns cannot be used as a subject. I mean, it's the whole thought and idea of like, is there like another Mount Rushmore that I need to know about? Um, or what audit and legal media and deposition is in the way of like retroactive administration. I mean, if all that thought is ultimately getting to like a counterbalancing the Earth for perfected seasonal changes over spherical quadrants, and that architecture platform embedding encryption, or what the thought is of Vantage Love 30 in a way. What Vantage is, normally most people's perception of Vantage would be the thought of advantage. I mean, if that hadn't already been what it's always been, I mean, if Vantage is only the thought of like telepathic brainwaves, and hey man, like that guy knows whether he knows or not, or he's accused of knowing anyway, right? Like where's that guy? Are you listening to him now? I mean, is that all that telepathic silence based upon perception, like right now? So anyway, yeah. So like yeah. So anyway, yeah. So like all that, like it's like telepathic. Yeah, it's like telepathic brainwaves. Like it's beyond the 73 in the truck thing, right? And State of the Union address, right? All that baseball field 90 degrees stuff, symmetrical, asymmetrical factor of like whether or not if the barcode is raising that baritone beyond the thought of a symbolic representation, on the backside of the U.S. $1 bill, going beyond the Texas Instruments and the EE thing and the redundant frequency RF thing and the FR and the word free, ultimately getting to the thought of the terabyte being 1024 and that using only two numbers in sequencing characterizations, that's 4 and 1024 is 34, or thought that way of 1 terabyte being 1024 is like 34, even the third and fourth generation in a way of biblical prophecy, right? Or what that is to FM 1128 in Pearland, Texas, or Old Manville Highway or Massey Highway, the FM 1128 thing, and ultimately it gets even to the factor of like just being Brazoria and County Road 45, and the way of like Galveston County and like Interstate 45, and the thought that way of like what scale is, or what pi or square is, that way of like even Highway 35 in Pearland, and Austin, Texas, and Austin Powers, Blue Bonnet, and Paralegal that way, or like the Code Blue thing. And my thing about the thought of like a um, Diners Club seems to be like the big deal about the base foundation of it all, with the combination of like a E equal MC squared thing about the pi r squared, getting into the exponential quotient of powers of multiplication that way of Diners Club, and a symbolic representation, ultimately getting to the 90-degree deal about the absolute values, that way of like exponential quotients of powers of multiplication as a base foundation, and combinating, the E equal MC squared thing about it between the EBT, similarly the thing about the snap food beverages in the Lone Star card, and the Diners Club thing, getting into the quantum of why the structure in quantum is Japanese in a way of what's only identified as having 22 alphabetical letters, and how true it is. In any case, it's the structure of the Japanese. It's the actual structure in quantum using the different by design E thing about it. And I mean, if that's all it is like, just reading Japanese from top to bottom, well, there it is, because that's the thing about the symbolic representation on in between the C and the PTI is thing about why I have completely slowed completely down right there at that vertical part about it, in my mind, being the quantum beyond a simple computation of like the field scope and range of law as compared to the horizontal line to the halo left side, making the alphanumerics of 58, 59, and why Highway 59 is the alphanumerics 140 and Pearland, Texas attenuation, alphanumerics, and why alphanumerics USA and attenuation USA, Pearland, Texas USA is 181. Houston, Texas Electronic Power, and Wing International. But anyway, yeah, I'm going to take a break. It's already going on an hour and 3 minutes and 33 seconds here. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to take a break anyway, okay? Talk to you later.